Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Michael and Patty Show. I'm Michael.
And I'm Patty.
And today we're looking out at the Charlottetown cruise ship terminal. We've seen 3 cruise ships this year so far, and it's just the beginning of May. Patty, I'm going to hand it over to you to sing our intro song. On 3, 2, 1.
We don't have an intro song.
You said you were going to sing one.
No, I did not.
Well, I guess we're just going to get on with the subjects then. It's springtime, almost feeling like summer, and what happens in the springtime. Soon as you have nice weather, it's so ironic and bizarre. We have 20 degrees Celsius, a sunny day, my phone's ringing off the hook like never before, and it happens absolutely every year because, as we know from the podcast, real estate is in cycles. And it's kind of scary how definitive those cycles are. But we get that first sunny, warm day, and all of a sudden everyone's looking to buy or sell. Do you find that?
Yes, and both, actually. So sellers will call you up. They want an appointment this afternoon. They want a price before they go to sleep that night, and they want it on the market the next day. They just want you to drop everything, and then buyers will be saying that they've been combing the MLS, and guess what? We're here, and they never announced themselves prior to this, and they want to get into a list of properties that sometimes can take a couple days to get all set up. So make sure that you give ample notice to whether it is a listing agent or a buyer's agent if you have intentions to do real estate this year.
So what we're going to do is we're going to cover, and I know we've covered this in a small sense before, things from a buyer's perspective. You're going through houses. We're talking specifically houses, not land or commercial buildings or apartments. And what should you look for? We're going to try to do this as quickly as possible. You may want to take notes or listen to the podcast at least 10 or 12 times
Yes.
so you don't miss anything. But we'll start off with the exterior and the structure. This is what you see, obviously, from the outside, typically from the driveway when you pull in initially. So what I'm always looking for is roof condition, the age, visible sagging or missing shingles. We're not going to get into the causes of all these because this podcast would turn into 5 hours. You're looking for foundation cracks, especially horizontal ones. I look for foundation blocks, which I don't really like, opposed to poured concrete or ICF, which is poured concrete as well, but insulated. Siding for damage, rot, or warping, chimney condition, and proper flashing. I know this is something the home inspectors pick up all the time. Gutters and downspouts working and intact. Grading, sloping away from the house. This is really important if you don't want a river in your basement, and if you're buying a house that's 40 years old, 30, 40, 50 years old, and it has an unfinished basement, be particularly careful to make sure you're not buying a house with a built-in swimming pool, and grading or hills leading towards the house are almost a guaranteed way to have a wet basement, and that's probably why it hasn't been finished.
Yeah, so if you show up on the property and you just have a quick little checklist, you walk around the outside before you go inside for the viewing, and you notice any potential grading issues, if it does have a basement, it may present itself downstairs.
Driveway and walkway cracks or settling. Pay attention, particularly for dishonest sellers in the winter. Remember that house I offered on that just didn't happen to shovel part of their driveway?
Yes.
And then, of course, we see in the spring it's because it's absolutely shot and needed to be replaced, but thank you very much for hiding it. But we sort of knew that when we were looking at the house, that you just don't not uncover part of your driveway with snow unless there's a reason. Fence condition and property line accuracy. I'm not sure how you're going to guarantee property line accuracy unless you have a surveyor present. Exterior paint peeling or bubbling, window frames for rot or seal failure. Patty, let's see how quickly you can cover windows and doors.
So windows and doors, double pane windows with no fogging between panes. So that's the seal. If it's gone, you will see that cloudiness or condensation in between. Windows open, close, and lock properly. Doors swing freely and latch correctly. That they're not, sometimes seasonally, they'll get a little tight and they may need to be planed. So don't make a big issue sometimes over little problems, but be aware of it. Weather stripping intact around exterior doors. The other thing at this time of year, look around the windows and see if there's a bunch of tape that they may not have gotten off because it is a window that may be drafty. You may still see residuals of the weather stripping, like the seals that people put on. So just a little sneak thing to look for. Storm doors and screens present and functional. A lot of people will take their screens off in the winter months and store them away in their basement. You come in, you purchase a property, and you assume that there are screens, or if you've not checked at all, you may be surprised that some of the windows don't have any.
So that needs to be in the purchase and sale. And if you do have fogging windows, in some places, they do have people out there that can recharge the windows, but not always.
Correct.
Plumbing. And a lot of this stuff your home inspector should be looking at. So you're not going to spend hours on a showing. You're just going to take some mental notes here for things that are really outstanding. But water pressure in the showers and sinks, hot water comes through quickly, toilets flush properly without running, drains empty quickly without gurgling, visible pipes for corrosion or leaks, water heater age and capacity. That's an interesting one. If you YouTube water heater, water tank longevity, they don't last as long as a lot of people think. Did you know that?
Yes.
You did?
I
You're
did know
YouTube
that.
plumber certified?
No, it's nothing to do with that. I just know, what is the lifespan if you have a number?
It depends on the tank. The tank will usually tell you on a label outside, but there is a routine maintenance thing. Are you familiar with the little rod that goes inside that's supposed to attract all the contaminants?
No, I didn't know that.
Well, there's a rod in a hot water tank. I don't remember the details, but if that rod's replaced every 2 to 3 years, you will actually extend the life of the tank, some people say indefinitely. So look into that. It's all on YouTube. Types of pipes, avoid polybutylene. I don't know
Butylene, yeah.
what they're referring to there. I would say avoid Kitec, Kitec. The plastic pipes depends on the connectors, and most plumbers are using the plastic PEX A and PEX B, PEX, and they work great. So this may be a little bit of a dated comment, but do look for plumbing systems that are antiquated and have a tendency to fail. Sewer lines, scope offered or recommended. Patty, you had a question about or comment about pipes?
Yeah, just where you can see the plumbing. Again, this is a quick checklist to walk through just so that when you are looking at a property during a viewing, again, you can get a home inspection, but some of these things could be easily visible. The Kitec, if it is an unfinished basement, you would see it through the lines running, and you can take a picture if it's higher ceilings and just kind of zoom in and see what the writing says on it.
And it's usually orange, but not necessarily. This is an interesting one. In Prince Edward Island, we do not typically do this. I was on, and don't ask me why, a home inspection in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where it's actually required typically to do a sewer camera viewing per se, and if there's any problems with anything keeping the sewer lines from working, tree roots or whatever, I believe if it's on the property line, the homeowner's responsible. If it's off the property line, the city will take care of it. But we haven't gotten into scoping the sewer lines yet, although it's probably a great thing to do.
Yeah, and Charlottetown was never built or developed for the size that it is. So I'm sure many of our lines down in the core, at some point,
But that has nothing to do with this. That has to do with the main sewer lines. This is just the pipe running between your house and the main sewer line.
That's what I'm talking about.
Well put.
Go right ahead.
Water stains under sinks or on ceilings. This happens a lot. I have a cottage listed now, and there's a stain there that's been on the ceiling for 15 years. Of course, if you want to invoke any sort of questioning about your roof functioning, just leave that stain there forever like these guys are doing, right? But it's something to look for. Electrical. Go ahead, Patty.
So electrical panel, the size, 100 amp versus 200 amp. There are still fuses on some homes on PEI. It is not a big issue, but where there is an issue is if it is like an older home or a cottage and it still has 60 amp, you may have some difficulties getting insurance on that. No knob and tube or aluminum wiring, GFCI outlets in kitchens and bathrooms, because that will come up All it is taking note. We are not telling you to give a list of things that need to be done by the seller prior to you closing. It's just these are items that you could look for. You'll be far more informed when you do get your home inspection done. You hopefully won't have any big surprises. And some of these are not big ticket items that are expensive. Adequate outlets in every room, light switches and all functional, no exposed or dangling wire, smoke and carbon monoxide detectors present.
Changing the page.
It goes a little slow with the paper today.
We're getting it into topic that sucks. Go ahead.
HVAC systems, furnace age and last service date, air conditioning unit, age and condition, even tempered throughout the home, air filter. Even temperature throughout the home, air filter condition, ductwork visible condition, thermostat type and functionality.
So they're referring mainly to forced air. We do not have a lot of forced air systems here. We do have some, but the vast majority here are oil-fired boilers, which if you are YouTube certified like I am in plumbing, are not as popular as your forced air natural gas fired. So it is important to change the filters and have these serviced every year. They check the little injector, blah, blah, blah. But get a furnace technician in, not just someone that's going to clean it. Kitchen.
Appliances age and which convey. What does that mean? And which convey?
The age of the appliances and which appliances are included with the purchase and sale. We'll negate that comment, but basically someone's going through a house and they see a expensive Wolf range, they're sort of going to wonder, is that included?
Well, the other thing is, don't assume that the appliances that you see during your viewing, now this has only happened once to me in my 16 plus years of real estate, but the seller swapped it out with my buyer. If the appliances are something that may be a big deal for you, you might want to just take a picture of the appliances. So on closing day, or make sure that they're clear on the listing pictures, that is the appliance that you are getting at closing. Because most times people are pretty honest. What you see is what you get, but that's not always the case here.
So always specify the make, model, even a serial number if one is visible. Unfortunately, a lot of times they're in the back. They're not typically inside. Sometimes they'll be in the bottom drawer, but do put in the specifics when writing the offer.
Especially if it's a higher end expensive appliances that you were expecting. Cabinet condition and soft close hinges, just a nice little feature.
Countertop.
I write cabinet condition and soft close. Okay, I forgive you for interrupting me. Countertop material and damage, sink and faucet condition, pantry or storage space adequacy, range hood ventilation, vented outside or versus recirculating. Do not be surprised if you end up experiencing a home and the little hood that is above the stove doesn't vent anywhere. That is very common on PEI, and that was one of the things that I had to get my head around when I moved here many years ago from Ontario. Not something that you see there, but if it is important to you, check that item so that you're not surprised after closing going, wait a minute, this doesn't seem to be right.
And how do they know if it's venting outside?
Well, usually the cupboard above, you'll see the piping.
Or outside the house. More importantly, make sure your bathrooms aren't venting into the attic. What I like to do on showings is I just like to fit Patty, because she's small, right through that attic hatch to look for these things.
No, that is a question for your home inspector. Please do not, during your showings, start lifting attic hatches and pulling out the seller's furniture and chairs and climbing up on them and going up into the attic. I have had a situation that during a showing, buyers and their agent decided they were going to do a little home inspection during just their viewing, their visible viewing. This wasn't dissecting things and touching everything. And they left some insulation that had fallen from the attic on the floor. The sellers came home. The pup went running through, came to the front door with pink insulation hanging out of their mouth. The seller couldn't get to them quick enough. Ended up swallowing it. They spent the entire night at the vets. So please don't do what you just suggested and check. That is something for the home inspection. And do not leave insulation. Be very mindful of how you leave a property.
Or if there is insulation, just use cotton candy so it's okay for the dog to eat it.
Okay, outlet placements for appliances. Cover bathrooms, Michael.
Bathrooms, tile and grout conditions, caulking around tubs and showers, exhaust fans to the outside. We just talked about that. Very important. It can cause major issues in your attic and black mold that can cost thousands of dollars to rectify. Tub and shower drain speed, vanity and mirror condition, adequate ventilation to prevent mold. Bedrooms and living spaces. This is important. Closet size and storage. Patty's case, she needs a closet that's a minimum 1,000 square feet.
You think so?
Natural light and window placement, ceiling height, floor levelness. Try the marble test or level. Hardwood, carpet, laminate condition, wall cracks, beyond hairline settling. Room sizes for your furniture. Patty, moving to the basement.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say room sizes. If room sizes are important to you as a buyer, measure the rooms yourself. Do not always trust what's on the listing.
Bring a laser.
Bring a laser measure or bring your tape measure.
No, not a tape measure. It's too slow.
It is a little time. The point is, if it is important, do not 100% rely on what the listing agent, because some listing agents, which we're not supposed to do, but I do know it has been done, will copy the previous listing. So if there was a mistake 10 years ago and it's been on the market 3 additional times and all they keep doing is copying the same measurements from the listing before, you could run into carrying the hot potato where the room is smaller than you thought and the measurements were wrong. So as a listing agent, do them. As a buyer, if it is important, please measure the room size. Basement and attic, signs of water intrusion or efflorescence, which we'll get into later on. Sump pump, presence and condition. Insulation, type and amount. Or existence, 100%, because not all homes on PEI have a sump pump, but insurance companies like to see them. Attic ventilation, pest droppings or nesting, mold smell, or visible growth.
And with reference to sump pumps, you should have one, and some people believe in having a battery backed up one, particularly if you do have a wet basement. Getting into the most important room of the entire house, the garage and storage. Garage door opener and safety reverse. Garage size for your vehicles. Lots of lawsuits going on in North America where builders are building garages that you can't fit any normal car into. Workbench or storage space, shed condition, if present. Safety and code.
Stair railings secure, and if it's an older home, if they're high, because many years ago, the early settlers on Prince Edward Island were a little bit shorter than today. So you may still see those small little banisters, which are a potential risk to fall over, especially for little ones. Deck and balcony stability, permits pulled for additions, lead paint risk if pre-existing 1978, if it's old paint, asbestos risk in older homes, radon tests, results, or recommendations. So these are just things that you can ask. We're not saying that you need to complicate your agreement of purchase and sale and say, I want all of this done because this came from the Michael and Patty show, and we want to make sure that we are protected. Just recommendations and suggestions.
Smell and sensory, and these are things that may not be picked up or won't be picked up on a Zoom call or some sort of virtual showing, and this is something you can ask your agent about, particularly ones like Patty that have a beagle nose. Pet odors that may be masked by candles. If they have a lot of candles and incense and stuff like that, sort of wonder what's going on. Cigarette smoke, residue on walls. Cigarette smoke can be really difficult to get rid of when you're repainting. There's a special primer. Musty smells indicating moisture. Listen for traffic, trains, or aircraft. Cell signal in different rooms. That's important these days, as most people don't have home phones, but they do have a iPhone or whatever.
Correct. Neighborhood. Visit at different times a day. School district quality and boundaries. Not anything as realtors we're allowed to make comment on. As a buyer, these are things that if it's important to you, you need to do your own due diligence. Walking distance to amenities, if that is important to you. Commute time during rush hour. Street, not that we have many rush hours, but it is a little busier now in Charlottetown. the last, I'd say since COVID, actually, when we had this mass migration here. We do actually have little rush hours and traffic jams, and which is crazy because it was not like that when I moved to PEI almost 17 years ago now. Street parking availability, neighbor property condition. Not that all tenants can be bad, but sometimes you want to make sure, because it maintains your investment in your home, that everyone around your potential property purchase also loves their home and maintains it. Future development plans nearby, HOA rules, fees, and reserve.
There is one neighborhood I looked at years ago. I really liked it. I couldn't understand why no one wanted to live there until I visited it a Saturday morning and realized it was absolute chaos. So if you are looking at a neighborhood and it's a little more densely populated, drop by a Friday or Saturday night or Saturday morning and see what kind of activity is surrounding you. Location factors, flood zone designation, that would be more for waterfront properties, and we do track that in line here. Wildfire risk areas, that doesn't really apply to us. Proximity to power lines or cell phone towers. There's been hundreds of articles written about being around power lines. Distance to hospital, fire station, grocery. Sex offender registry check.
Yeah.
Ooh. And crime stats for the area. Interesting thing about crime stats is politicians don't really like to advertise that, because I've asked them to map it, and in the past they haven't. I don't know if they're doing it now, but that's what they're looking for.
So the next section is financial and legal, property tax history and increases, recent comparable sales, days on market, seller's reason for selling, utility bill averages, insurance quote, including flood insurance, title issues or easements, have the realtor that you're working with pull the registry and see if there is anything that may be of concern. You can see whether there's liens or anything on the property. You want to make sure you're going to be able to purchase this property with no issues, and that everything that's on the assessment is what exists, that there's a garage and the assessment says there's a garage or decking or whatever the case may be. Survey and property line clarity, if available, would be great. If there's a plot plan, it also helps to reduce the cost of title insurance. That is something different lenders may give a little bit of an incentive to if there is a plot plan. So be sure to ask for those things.
Practical use. Cell and Wi-Fi coverage throughout. Obviously, you can change your Wi-Fi. You can't change your cell legally. Internet provider options and speeds. This is particularly important if you are in a rural area and expect to hook up to fiber and there is none, or anything for that matter. You're going to rely on satellite or wireless through a cell phone network. Layout flow for your lifestyle, storage adequacy overall, resale considerations for the future. A few practical tips: bring a phone charger to test outlets, run every faucet, don't be shy about opening every closet and cabinet. That's true. You like to do that.
Well, I feel that they should. It's a buyer's experience to go through a home. And sometimes, so if you're a seller and you're wondering what's going on, I'm going to tell you, I am okay if my buyers, especially if I know they're really interested in the home, kind of peek in and just see what are the condition of the cabinetries. Again, we talked about whether they're soft closing and all of that. You know, do the doors open and close easily? Is it just kind of like stuck in place, and as soon as you open it, the whole door falls and it comes off its little hinge? As well as, how does the current property owner find the best use of the cabinets? Is this where the dishes should go? This is where maybe food can go? Because it helps the buyer move in a little bit.
A good agent expects this. I don't know if I agree with that.
Okay.
And a quality home inspection later will catch whatever your eye misses.
Yeah.
And obviously, you're not going to spend an inordinate amount of time on a property you've absolutely no interest in. But if this is something you're seriously interested in, chances are you'll spend more time. And any experienced agent knows that time is usually an indicator of interest level. Someone goes in and out of a house in 4 seconds, chances are it's extremely unlikely that they're going to offer, opposed to someone being there for 2.5 hours, with few exceptions.
But so an average showing time, Michael, just for clarity, because I've had seller clients who were very inconvenienced and frustrated and upset that they didn't realize they booked a showing. It's not like this was a 7,000 square foot home, which you would expect it to take at least an hour to kind of get through everything. And these buyers with their agent took about an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes to go through their home. They're driving around the neighborhood with their kids, with their dog, waiting. Yes, they were being very patient and understanding. Yes, they want to sell their home, but they didn't realize this was the length of time they were going to be out. An average showing, usually anywhere from 15 minutes to 30 minutes. And in a little bit bigger of a home, you can expect up to 45. But after that, if you know you have a client that this is the home and they want to spend an hour, please book the hour and let the sellers know. Don't just assume you get to take all the time in the world.
Usually showings are booked in an hour period. You may not be there at the start of that hour because your buyer's dragging their feet, or it took you longer to get there because of the PEI traffic with the farm tractors. But usually it's within an hour. And that was good advice, Patty.
Yes.
We're going to talk about HST rebates to first-time home buyers. What we're not going to get into is the specifics of it because the Canadian Revenue Agency, CRA, similar to the IRS in the States, has to overcomplicate the crap out of everything. But what we will do is look at this from an agent perspective because this sort of stuff is going on. And I said to Patty that there's agents out there saying they know everything there is to know about this convoluted rebate of HST, which is a federal sales tax to new first-time home buyers, but what they're negating is they're not writing it in the contract that alleviates the potential for their brokerage getting sued if this rebate doesn't come, or it comes and then CRA, and we've heard this happen recently, comes back and says, well, you're unapproved, so you owe us this money back. As an agent or a broker, you shouldn't be warranting or saying, yes, I know all the formulas and this is how much you're going to get back, and then holding yourself, or more importantly, your brokerage, in Patty's case, responsible. So the HST rebate, in a nutshell, Patty, is what?
So there's two. So for HST rebate for new buyers is after closing. So a new build, typically what you would see is there'll be a clause written in there because the listing agent / whoever the builder is will have instructed the buyer's agent to put that the HST rebate is to be assigned back to the builder. So then the builder is able to, get that HST rebate back. So you'll see that and have for years and years and years on contracts with new builds. A new program that had come out in 2025, what CRA has done, is first-time home buyers are also eligible for a portion of the taxes paid. And we're not going to get into whether it's the federal portion or provincial portion or a little bit of the federal, a little bit of the provincial. There is a first-time home buyers HST or GST rebate that can be applied for. It gets applied after the property has closed and conveyed and the taxes have been paid. And that's nothing to do with the HST rebate portion that goes back to the builder because that's done typically at closing. However, you have to apply for it. CRA has to approve it. And so there's no guarantee as to what that number is going to be. So be mindful of that in your negotiations or what is being promised to you because you may not be as eligible as you assume. Or CRA also reserves the right to cancel programs whenever they want. So please, if you're an agent listening to this, watch what you are promising. And if you're a first-time homebuyer, if you do end up qualifying and it happens after closing, consider it a bonus, but I wouldn't hinge your negotiations on counting on that money coming back.
And regardless of whether you're a first-time homebuyer or not and you're buying a new house, which HST is probably applicable and maybe in addition to or inclusive of the price, make sure that is spelt out clearly. Otherwise, those monies could be floating around. And I've heard of certain situations where the builder was supposed to get the HST rebate. The government sent it to the home buyers and they kept it and refused to turn it over.
Yeah, there's It has to be in writing, and I don't know if the lawyers allowed that to happen or how that
It wasn't
scenario.
spelt out in the
Okay,
contract.
that's what I was
The
going to say.
builders went after the money, didn't explain really what was going on, and they ended up losing the money.
If it is not in writing, don't assume any little side cash deals. Don't assume things can happen outside the contract. The only thing that matters is what is documented. And if it is documented, then it can be disputed, fought. It hopefully will, everyone follows the contract to the letter.
Patty, if you were to start real estate over again from day one, what is the one piece of advice you would give to that new agent to do from day one of their career? I thought about this, and I actually received this training in the States at some point, but I'll save my answer for second. You go ahead. What would your one piece of advice be?
If it was today, I wish our podcast existed when I got into real estate, because I would have sat in anticipation because of the value of the information that we provide, the dialogue. The real estate agents speak almost their own language to understand what that language sounds like, looks like. Education, I guess, is basically what that equates to, which is exactly what I did. I did seek out education. I also did seek out top producing realtors to see if they would share their wisdom, which, I didn't get the reception that I was hoping for, not even from you, but you did end up providing once you realized I was serious about it. But I cannot.
I think the word was annoying.
You thought I was annoying.
Persistent and annoying.
Yes, I was. Education. And don't rely on, and this is internationally, this isn't just Canada, just US, don't just rely on your association or your national governing board. There are some great education sources out there. It is one of the slides in my presentation. Yes, I've been part of 2 franchise companies, and now I have my own private brokerage, if you will. And I always say to clients, new clients to me, that I'm part of a cooler group. I'm part of organizations, and there's a few of them that are all education-minded individuals. So that's my answer.
Well, I agree with everything you're saying. And in addition to that, what I would do is remember we received training on the loyalty circle, which means basically what they said is if you send your dry cleaning to a dry cleaner, you establish them in your circle of trust, per se, coming from a Seinfeld show, I think it was, where the dry cleaner agrees to send you any buyers and sellers for real estate. You do the same with your lawyers, your builders, your surveyors, your painters, your general contractors, the guy that cuts the lawn. So basically what you're doing is you're forming an alliance with all these people, and the agreement is that you're loyal to them, they're loyal to you. If you know someone looking to get plumbing or electrical or legal work done, you refer them back to your circle, and vice versa. I think that has to be done. For the most part, I find people are loyal, but there's always that 10% that isn't.
Yeah, and this is a relationship-based business. So do not sit behind your computer or in your home or at your office and assume people are going to find you. That just does not work. You need to be out in your community. You need to be, and I know my team doesn't like when I say this, but belly to belly with people. You need to be making a difference in your community. You need to show your communities that you care and that you are there to serve them. And it doesn't happen quickly. It does take some time, but real estate can be very rewarding when you get to watch the change that you are a part of in people's lives.
I had a client that elected to use a lawyer that I knew would be problematic and cause delays in the transaction. And in the end, they actually did. How do you explain this to the client without putting down the law office? Which this is a very, very isolated incident, but this particular case, they wanted to use a lawyer that was well into retirement, but you don't really want to blacklist them or anything because they're an excellent lawyer, but I did brace them to say there may be some delays. So I know you're closing on another house in another province or state. You may want to leave a bit of a window open there because people stack these transactions like dominoes, and this is what this particular home seller did. And there'll be more on this. What do you suggest to tell people? Don't use this lawyer, use mine or else.
No, I don't typically do that. So I will give away my conversation here. I will ask, how well do you know this lawyer? And I tread lightly because I don't know. It could be a family member or, an aunt's lawyer. There may be some connection, so I need to be very gentle and delicate. If I find out there is no kind of familial, connection, or it was just somebody that they somehow found and came across, then I very politically correct will say, well, based on, and whatever the scenario, the situation is, if it's tight time closings, if there are multiple closings that need to happen in the same day, so you want a really on top of it lawyer, I would nicely, gently say, because you have so much going on for your closing or transaction day, this lawyer may be able to pull this off, but, typically they move a little slower.
You know what I said?
What?
I said just stay on top of things.
But
make sure everything's done in the timelines for which it was intended and contractually obligated. Just make sure you're on top of things and it doesn't come to closing, because this has happened to me numerous times. I know it's happened to you. It comes for closing and the lawyer's like, I didn't get that file. What sale's this? They haven't even started looking at it. We had this happen last week.
Just had this happen.
What file? The friggin' file you had for 3 weeks.
Well, and the front...
Are you guys asleep?
So the files get sent to the lawyers, but the lawyers don't always send it to their paralegals or their assistants, and it's the assistants and the paralegal that was speaking to the clients, and so the clients are saying our lawyer doesn't have it, and here we have it documented that the lawyer had received it. It just wasn't forwarded. So what we have to do as a brokerage is find out who the paralegal or the assistant is to make sure, that's why lawyers have staff. They don't always stay on top of...
But you also had a seller that didn't bother to talk to their lawyer either and say, hey, I sold my house, wake up.
Compiled. So you should, if you're a client, whether a buyer or seller, introduce yourself to your lawyer. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. Make sure your lawyer
gets the grease.
Sure. Make sure your lawyer has your contact information and knows how to get a hold of you. Make sure if you do have a lawyer and you're a realtor that's honest, saying, sometimes this lawyer can be, they have a lot of files. Let's just say they have a lot of files, and to avoid any mistakes or the ball dropping for you, I highly recommend you stay in great communication and make sure that you stay on top of it with your lawyer, and it should all hopefully happen very smoothly.
We touched on this already, but we're going to revisit it quickly. Setting times for showings and establishing windows. I already established a typical window is 1 hour. Whether or not you show up right at the first minute of the hour basically depends on your last showing and travel. But usually the windows are like 2:30 to 3:30, 1 to 2. Patty?
And the reason for that is when a buyer comes to the island and they're setting up showings and they have, say, 5 showings, you shouldn't show any more than 5 or 6. Sometimes if it's a 1 day, you could push it 7, but at the end of the day, you will have built a completely new house unless you have an agent that knows the scripts and stays on top of it and ensures that you only have 1 or 2 houses in your head at the end of the day or properties. Now, when you're setting that up, you don't always know who the buyer is, and do they lollygag? Do they move into every single house? Do they place their Christmas tree in every single, house? Sometimes you get clients that take a little bit longer, and in their defense, they may only get this one viewing because they got their flight the next day to go back. So it is so important that they try to absorb everything they possibly can. But then you also get those clients that just go in going, nope, not the one. Nope, not the one.
That's me.
Yeah. Well, then if you booked an hour, you seem to have all this dead time in between. And this is where my story is going to come in. So realtors will book, like you had said, Michael, let's say there's 5 showings and you start at, first one's at 9, one's at 10, depending on the driving distance, of course, in between them. That is also, considered and driving time, but one at 9, 10, 11, 12, and 1 o'clock. Let's say your buyer is really quick and the 9 o'clock house is just a quick full stop no. So then they show up, and instead of showing up at 10, they show up at 20 after 9. Please don't do that unless your buyer's agent has reached out to the listing agent and received permission to do so. I've had a situation where a buyer and their agent showed up 50 minutes before the showing. This is an owner-occupied home, and it frustrated. My seller had said no to allowing them in because they were not ready for the viewing. They had a few things, and this is really important to them. They put a lot of time and pride into preparing the home in hopes that the buyer has a very positive experience, and they don't want there to be still crumbs on the counter or anything. Do not show up early. This situation, my client said no. They tried pushing their way through and into the house. My client continued to resist and said, no, you can come back at your scheduled time. I guess it wasn't received well, being turned away, and they never came back to view the home, which really now for the next couple days, I am speaking with my seller client who is very frustrated and put off by the experience. There's a buyer's experience while you're looking for a home that we want to hopefully keep as positive as we can, but there's also, do not underestimate the seller's experience, which we want to keep as positive as can be as well. If you do not have permission to show up early, do not show up early. Drive around, get a coffee, do something. If you book a showing for a certain time, show up at that time. Or if you're running a little late, a little later. Like if you're 1 o'clock and say you don't show up until 1:30, try to be mindful. Pushing it, maybe leave by 2:15 if it was booked from 1 to 2.
On to email fraud at its worst. That's the title, but I'm going to say it's funniest. This is not the first time this has ever happened to me. I receive an email, Patty. Boy, am I lucky. These people, this woman, Ashley, just inherited $125 million to the penny, and she wants to invest it in our local market. Boy, am I excited. As it turns out, she also indicates that she's a deaf mute, and she has no phone number. So the first thing I do, realizing this is absolute fraud and I should expect a call from Nigeria at any moment, which I have received as well, I tell her, these are the 25 things I need. I gave her this ridiculous list: passport, driver's license, friends contact phone number, their driver's license, their lawyer's name, address, their phone number. So I run their name, I run their fake email address they gave me. It's always a Gmail address. I ran their fake lawyer's office, which was funny because it was some house in some U.S. city. Didn't look anything like a lawyer's office, but they gave the address. But you know what they did? They actually sent me a copy of the will, it was one page. It was printed like a certificate that they graduated high school. It was littered with typos, and it referenced to this residential house in the States. It was too funny. And then she goes on to tell me, or whoever the perpetrator, fraudster is, you'll be expecting a call from my lawyer. So I'm thinking, oh, this should be interesting. And I didn't respond to that email, and they went away. Have you had that happen before, the $125 million inheritance?
Yeah, that started back when I got into real estate. Within the first couple years, I had received a couple of those, and you usually get one every year.
And what are they looking for? They're looking for all your banking information.
100%. So if you do receive this as a realtor, do not entertain, don't respond. Sometimes it's just something to log that this email actually goes to a person, because then you're going to be inundated and hounded with even more. And if you're a client or a buyer or consumer out there listening, don't underestimate how much nonsense and some of the chaos that we have to deal with as realtors. Like, these are the little crazy things that sometimes occupy our day. So you may think you're just emailing us looking for a package on 10 properties, but we get that times however many, depending on the busyness of the different realtors. Plus, we get this nonsense, where people are trying to scam us and get our contact information, and the craziness goes on.
Patty, this is exciting news to you and probably nobody else. There's a new field on our MLS system. Maybe you can tell us about that and fill us in, and also tell us why this field is not even required.
Well, there is a box that you can check for audio-video recording devices on site. What this is if a seller is recording, or they've got cameras, doorbell cameras, some sort of device inside their home, which they're allowed to do, that is recording the conversations and your activity within their home. One, it makes for a bit of a creepy experience. However, they are allowed to do so. You do not, so there's a box now to check, to just kind of red flag it. Hopefully your buyer's agent sees that it is checked and is able to convey or kind of do a little reset reminder outside before you step foot too close even to the house, because those doorbell cameras and that can catch a pretty good sound wave even if you are, in the driveway area. So my recommendation and suggestion to all buyer clients is to assume you're always on camera. Do not discuss numbers during a showing. Do not give away your motivation to purchase that house. Do not criticize that house. You will pay more for it if it turns out to be the one on your list that you end up deciding is the one you're going to move forward with, because you will have just ticked off that seller if they are recording you. So you just need to, I'm not saying have an authentic experience, but just don't give away too much information. Just say the facts, have a very neutral conversation. Don't give opinions, don't discuss price, don't give away your negotiating position, because sellers will take that into consideration if you do end up submitting an offer to them, or they'll just say, I'm not selling it to them.
Next, we'll wrap it up, but before we do, if you do find this information helpful, be sure to give us some feedback, star rating, comment, whatever you do on your platform that you're listening to this on. And Patty, I hand it over to you for our finale.
Thanks again for listening to another episode of the Michael and Patty Show, otherwise known as MAPS, PEI's podcast that helps guide and navigate you through the buying and selling, and a little bit of Prince Edward Island as well. If you're looking for an extension of this podcast, we do have a private Facebook group called Moving to Prince Edward Island, spelled completely out, from the Michael and Patty podcast, where it is filled with lots of great information. We have Toolbox Tuesday, which the next couple, so the last Toolbox Tuesday that was released the first week of May, I believe, was on what a final walkthrough is all about and what it is not, as well as the next coming weeks, so you get a little bit of a sneak peek, are going to be checklists that I provide on what you should be at your final walkthrough looking for on your closing day for a house or cottage, and then there's going to be a separate one the following Tuesday on what to look for when you're purchasing land. We appreciate each and every one of you and hope you all have a safe and happy summer season.
A prosperous day. Thanks for listening. Take care.
Thanks for listening.